Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into something pretty fundamental. Emotional intelligence, EQ.
That's right.
We've got this great stack of materials you sent, chapters, an article, all really driving home how much this stuff matters.
Yeah, it really does impact almost everything.
So think of this as your shortcut to understanding what EQ actually is, why it's maybe more important than you think, and crucially, how you can build it.
Exactly. Our mission today is to pull out the key insights, the really practical stuff, and make it easy to grasp and hopefully use right away.
Let's do it. So starting at the beginning, what exactly is emotional intelligence?
Okay, so at its core, EQ is basically your ability to recognize, understand, manage, and also influence your own emotions, and just as importantly, the emotions of other people.
Right, so handling ourselves and our relationships.
Pretty much. It's about effectiveness in those areas. And it's not brand new either. Solavy and Mayer first coined the term back in 1990. But it really hit the mainstream with Daniel Goleman's big book in '95. He made the case that EQ could be just as vital, maybe even more vital than IQ for success in life, career, relationships, everything.
That's a pretty bold claim that it could be more important than IQ.
It is, but the idea is that understanding and navigating feelings, ours and others, is just hugely significant.
Okay, so let's unpack that. It's not just about being super emotional or sensitive then.
Not at all, no. Being aware is part of it, sure. But EQ also heavily involves our rational side, how we regulate those emotions. Think about the brain for a sec.
Okay.
You've got the limbic system, kind of the emotional headquarters.
Yeah.
Inside that is the amygdala, that's your fast response hub.
The fight or flight place.
Exactly, that quick gut reaction. But then you've got the prefrontal cortex up front. That's your rational brain, decision-making, planning, and crucially, emotional regulation. The higher-level EQ stuff happens there. And don't forget the hippocampus that links emotions to memories, helping us learn from experiences. So EQ is really about getting these brain areas, the emotional and the rational, working together smoothly.
Got it. Like coordinating the team. So what are the main building blocks of EQ according to these materials?
Consistently, they point to 5 key components. We're talking self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills.
Okay, 5 big ones.
Yeah, and we can dive into each one and see how they help us navigate things better.
Perfect. Let's start with number 1, self-awareness. What does that really mean?
Self-awareness is basically knowing your own feelings. It's recognizing your emotions as they happen, understanding why you might be feeling that way, and seeing how those emotions affect your thoughts and your behavior.
So knowing what you feel and why.
And also knowing your emotional strengths and maybe your weaknesses. It's like having an internal emotional compass.
Right. So how do we get better at reading that compass? Any practical tips for building it?
Definitely. One simple thing is emotion tracking. Keep a little log, maybe in a notebook or just on your phone.
Like a diary.
Sort of, but focused on feelings. Just note down, maybe a couple of times a day, how am I feeling right now? What might have triggered it? How did I react? Over time, you start seeing patterns.
Okay. That sounds doable. Just checking in. What else?
Actively labeling your emotions.
Yeah.
When you feel something strong, pause and try to name it. Is it frustration, disappointment, excitement?
Instead of just feeling bad or good.
Exactly. Asking, what am I feeling and why, helps you get specific. It moves it from this vague cloud to something you can actually understand.
Okay, tracking and labeling. Makes sense.
And building on that is just regular check-ins. Set a reminder or use transitions in your day, like finishing a meeting, to just ask, okay, how am I feeling right now? What's going on internally?
Just taking that moment. Mindfulness almost.
Very much so. Being present with your emotional state. Now, the materials also mentioned emotional triggers. What's the deal with those?
Yeah, what are triggers?
Triggers are those specific things. Maybe a comment, a situation, even a certain look that reliably set off a strong emotional reaction in you.
Like pushing your buttons.
Pretty much. And often, they're tied to past experiences or maybe core values being challenged or even unmet needs. Identifying your specific triggers is a huge part of self-awareness.
Okay, so how do we figure out what our triggers are? Seems tricky.
It takes a bit of detective work. Think back to times you had a really intense emotional response. Ask yourself, what happened right before? What was said? What did I do?
Looking for the cause and effect.
Exactly. Journaling about these instances can be super helpful. Write it down. Felt really angry when X happened. You start to see connections. Maybe criticism always triggers defensiveness because of something in your past.
Right, connecting the dots. You mentioned journaling. What other reflective practices help here?
Journaling is great. It's a safe space. Mindfulness, like you said, is huge. Just being present, noticing emotions arise without immediately judging them or reacting.
Just observe.
Just observing. Even a few minutes of focusing on your breath daily can build that muscle. And then there's meditation, a more focused mindfulness practice. Breath meditation is a good starting point. It trains your attention and helps you see thoughts and feelings come and go.
Okay, so journaling, mindfulness, meditation, they all seem to help create a little space between the feeling and the reaction,
That's a perfect way to put it.
which leads us nicely into the second component, self-regulation. What's that all about?
Self-regulation is about managing those reactions. It's your ability to control disruptive emotions, handle impulses, and basically respond thoughtfully instead of just, flying off the handle.
So not suppressing emotions.
No, definitely not suppression. That's unhealthy. It's about managing them constructively. Think of it like having a dimmer switch for your emotions, not just an on-off.
Okay, managing, not blocking. So how do we actually do that when we're feeling, say, really angry or anxious?
One powerful technique is reframing your thoughts, consciously shifting your perspective.
How does that work?
Well, say you're nervous about a presentation. Instead of thinking, I'm going to fail, you could reframe it as, this nervousness is energy. It's helping me prepare. Or seeing a setback not as failure, but as a chance to learn something.
Finding the upside or the learning opportunity. I like that. What else?
Physical techniques work wonders too. Deep breathing. Simple, but effective. Slow, deep breaths calm that fight or flight system down.
Just breathe.
Just breathe. Progressive muscle relaxation is another one, tensing and releasing muscle groups. And mindful awareness, again, just noticing the emotion without getting swept away, gives you that space to choose your response.
So mind and body working together. The materials talked about the power of the pause. What's that about?
The pause. It's incredibly important for self-regulation. Our first impulse, especially when emotional, isn't always our best one.
Definitely not.
Right. So pausing, taking even just a second or two before you speak or act, lets you step back from the heat of the moment. It allows your rational brain to catch up.
How do we make ourselves pause in that moment, though? It's hard.
Practice. One way is the pause and reflect technique. Feel the emotion rising. Stop. Literally stop. Then ask, okay, what's really going on here? What am I feeling underneath? What's the most constructive way forward?
A mini internal meeting before you react?
Kind of, yeah. Another super simple trick is the 5-second rule. Feel that urge to snap back or react impulsively. Count slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Often that's enough to break the circuit.
5 seconds. I can try that. It gives you that moment to choose your response.
Exactly. You choose your response instead of just letting the emotion dictate it. That leads into the last bit under self-regulation, building emotional resilience.
Resilience. Bouncing back.
That's it. It's your ability to cope with stress, adversity, setbacks. Life throws curveballs. Resilience is how well you handle them without falling apart. And self-regulation is key to building it.
So how do we get more resilient?
A big part is adopting a growth mindset, believing you can learn and grow from challenges rather than seeing them as fixed limits.
Seeing struggles as opportunities.
Yes. Also, building a strong support system. People you trust, who you can talk to, that's huge for resilience. And fundamentally, self-care and stress management. Looking after yourself physically and mentally gives you the resources to cope.
Makes sense. You can't bounce back if you're already running on empty. Okay, let's move to number 3. Motivation. How does that fit into EQ?
So motivation in the EQ context isn't just about, wanting things. It's more about an internal drive. Achieving goals because they're personally rewarding or aligned with your values, not just for external praise or money.
Okay. Intrinsic motivation.
Exactly. The source is contrasted intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic is doing something for the sheer enjoyment or satisfaction of it. Reading because you're curious. Working on a project because you find it meaningful.
Driven from within.
Right. And that tends to be more sustainable long term. Extrinsic motivation is driven by outside factors. Money, grades, rewards, avoiding punishment.
Like bonuses or fear of getting fired.
Yep. Extrinsic motivators have their place, especially at work, but relying only on them often leads to burnout. The goal is often to find ways to connect external tasks to your internal values or sense of purpose, finding that intrinsic spark.
Finding the meaning in it. So how do we harness this motivation effectively?
Setting good goals is crucial. The SMART criteria came up a lot. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound.
Right. I've heard of SMART goals.
They work. Instead of, I want to be healthier, it's, I'll walk for 30 minutes 5 days a week for the next month. Much clearer, easier to track, feels more real.
Gives you something concrete to aim for. What else helps keep motivation up?
Breaking big goals down. A huge project feels overwhelming. Breaking it into small, manageable steps makes it less daunting. Each little win builds momentum.
Small victories.
Totally. And celebrating those wins. Acknowledge your progress. It reinforces the effort and keeps you going. Don't just rush to the next thing.
Good point. We often forget to do that. But what about self-doubt? That can kill motivation fast.
Oh, absolutely. Overcoming self-doubt is key. Again, reframing helps. See doubts or setbacks not as proof you can't do it, but as learning moments. Adopt that growth mindset.
Be kind to yourself, too.
Yes, self-compassion is vital. Treat yourself with the same kindness you'd offer a friend who's struggling. Visualization can help to vividly imagine achieving your goal. And lean on your support system for encouragement. Learn from setbacks, adjust your plan, and keep going.
It's a process, not perfection. Okay, component number 4, empathy and social awareness. What's the difference there?
They're closely related. Empathy is more about understanding and sharing the feelings of another person, putting yourself in their shoes, feeling with them.
Feeling what they feel.
To some extent, yes. Social awareness is broader. It's being attuned to the emotions of others, the overall emotional climate of a group, picking up on social cues. Reading the room, basically.
So empathy is deeper, social awareness is broader.
Kind of. You need social awareness to practice empathy effectively. The sources mention 3 types of empathy.
Oh, what are they?
First is cognitive empathy. Understanding someone's perspective, how they think. Useful for, say, negotiation.
Seeing their side.
Exactly. Then there's emotional empathy. Actually feeling what the other person feels. This builds connection and compassion.
A heart connection.
Right. And finally, compassionate empathy. Understanding, feeling, and being moved to help or take action. Combines head and heart with action.
Understanding, feeling, doing. Got it. So how do we develop empathy? It sounds important, but maybe difficult.
Listening skills are absolutely fundamental. We're talking active listening.
Not just hearing, but really listening.
Exactly. Giving your full attention, put the phone away, make eye contact, be present, show your engaged nod, make affirming sounds, ask follow-up questions. Crucially, don't interrupt just to state your own point and try not to judge. Let them fully express themselves and try paraphrasing. So if I understand correctly, you're feeling. It shows you're trying to get it right.
Confirms understanding for both people.
Yes. And be open to the emotions behind the words. Pay attention to tone, body language, the nonverbal stuff.
Which brings us to recognizing emotional cues. How do we get better at reading people?
Practice and observation. Pay attention to body language. Are arms crossed? Is posture open or closed? Slumped shoulders.
The nonverbal signals?
Tone of voice, too. Is it sharp, soft, hesitant? And facial expressions, furrowed brow, slight frown, genuine smile, these all offer clues.
But context matters, right? Crossed arms might just mean someone's cold.
Absolutely. Context is key. And cultural differences play a huge role in how emotions are expressed and interpreted. So it's about noticing cues and considering the situation.
Being a better observer overall. Okay, that leads us to the final piece. Social skills. What falls under this umbrella?
Social skills are really about how effectively you manage relationships and navigate social situations. It covers communication, conflict resolution, collaboration, influence. Basically, interacting well with others.
Putting it all together in interactions, how do we build those skills, particularly communication and handling conflict?
Well, a lot of it comes back to things we've touched on, active listening, clear speaking, but also being aware of your own nonverbal signals. Are you projecting openness or defensiveness?
How you come across.
Right. And giving constructive feedback, focusing on the behavior or situation, not attacking the person. Being specific, explaining the impact, maybe suggesting alternatives.
Doing it kindly but clearly.
Exactly. For conflict resolution, the key is staying calm, genuinely trying to see their side, using I statements, I feel frustrated when, instead of you statements, you are.
Less blame, more collaboration.
Yes, aiming for solutions that work for everyone involved, if possible.
The materials also stress trust and respect. How do they fit in?
They're the absolute bedrock of good relationships. Trust is built over time through honesty, reliability, doing what you say you'll do, and sometimes being appropriately vulnerable.
Showing you're human.
Right. And respect means valuing others' perspectives, even when you disagree. Respecting boundaries, giving people space, and importantly, being able to genuinely apologize when you mess up and forgive when others do, that keeps relationships healthy.
Apologizing and forgiving. Hard sometimes, but crucial. How does all this play out in leadership and teamwork?
Hugely important. Effective leaders almost always have high EQ. They're self-aware, they regulate their emotions, they're empathetic, they communicate well, they inspire trust, not just command authority.
Leading by example.
Exactly. And in teams, EQ fosters open communication, mutual respect, and a focus on shared goals. It helps people navigate disagreements constructively and collaborate effectively. Leaders can actually help build EQ in their teams by modeling it and creating a safe space for open emotional expression.
So EQ isn't just personal, it really scales up to teams and organizations. We've covered the 5 components, but where else does EQ make a big difference, according to the sources?
Oh, its impact is broad. Think personal relationships, family, friends, partners. EQ helps build trust, intimacy, navigate conflict better. Everything runs smoother.
Makes sense.
In the workplace, we touched on leadership and teamwork, but also individual job satisfaction. Better relationships at work usually mean less stress and feeling more fulfilled.
Less drama, more productivity.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And then there's our own mental well-being and resilience. EQ helps manage stress because you understand your triggers and can use techniques like reframing. It builds resilience, that ability to bounce back, and generally supports better mental health.
So it's internal and external benefits. Did the sources mention any specific leaders known for high EQ?
Yeah, a few examples came up. Nelson Mandela was often cited for his incredible empathy and self-regulation, especially his focus on reconciliation.
Amazing example.
Indra Nooyi, former PepsiCo CEO, known for empathetic leadership and collaboration. And Satya Nadella at Microsoft, credited with shifting the culture towards empathy, shows it works at the highest levels.
Wow. Powerful stuff. It's really encouraging that this is something we can actually develop. It's not fixed.
That's maybe the most important takeaway. Unlike IQ, which is relatively stable, EQ is a set of skills. Skills can be learned, practiced, and improved throughout life.
So if you had to boil it down, what's the core message for someone listening?
The core message is, emotional intelligence is crucial, it's learnable, and it impacts almost everything you do. It's not about being weak or overly nice. It's about being smart about emotions, your own and others.
Emotionally smart. And what are some immediate, actionable first steps people could take?
Start small. Try tracking your emotions for a day or two. Practice that pause before reacting in one specific situation where you usually don't. Really focus on listening fully in your next important conversation. Reflect on one emotional trigger you have.
Concrete steps. Not trying to change everything overnight.
Exactly. Pick one thing. Start there. Remember, mastering EQ is a journey, not a destination. It's ongoing growth and self-discovery.
Okay, so here's a final thought for everyone listening. Think about one relationship or maybe one recurring situation in your life where you feel like a bit more emotional intelligence could make a positive difference. What's just one small step based on what we discussed that you could commit to taking this week?
And maybe revisit those source materials or just think back on our chat with this EQ framework in mind. Which of the 5 areas, self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, social skills, feels like the most important one for you to work on right now? Focusing your efforts can be really powerful.
It really comes down to recognizing our potential for growth, doesn't it? Building that emotional intelligence can lead to a much more fulfilling life. Thanks for diving deep with us today.